Everybody, my name is Olivia. Hi everyone, my name is Olivia Carr, founder of Silk. I am thrilled to be here today on behalf of NORA for our next generation customer acquisition in an unpredictable retail landscape. I'm joined today by some incredible panelists. We've got Willem from Luxury Escapes, we've got Sam Thompson and Mark Titley from Bench. And I'm just going to hand over now and let our panelists introduce themselves. So we might start with Mark.
Sure. Hi, I'm Mark. I'm Head of Client Services at Bench. At Bench, we take a pretty unique approach to advanced digital strategy, planning, data analysis and measurement, all with the goal of helping our clients grow and evolve their digital capabilities. As the Head of Client Services, I work closely with brands and agencies on their digital transformation journeys. I also work very closely with Sam, who has a bit of a unique role in the business.
Cool, yeah. Cheers, Mark. I'll go next. My name's Sam. As Mark mentioned, we work super closely together, but where my role differs is that I work a little bit more closely with the digital supply chain. So I vet the technology, I vet the data solutions, and I vet all of the media partners before integrating them into our capabilities so that Mark's team have market-leading solutions to strategize around and implement for our customers.
And hi, I'm Willem. I'm Director of Personalization and Customer Experience at Luxury Escapes. So that covers all our marketing technology and both digital advertising and email and website experience and so on.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for the introduction. And I just want to start reminding everyone today that this is going to be about a 45-minute discussion, but I really encourage any questions that come through during this webinar that you drop them in the chat box. If they're relevant, we'll answer them at the time. If not, we will get to them at the end. But to start off, I am just going, well, firstly, I would like to encourage questions today and to make this the most innovative conversation that we can have. But I would like, I guess, Sam and Mark, you guys work at Bench and you specialise in programmatic. And I know myself personally as a founder of an e-commerce brand, this was one of the conversations that we had when we first caught up, is that I found myself Googling what that even meant. So it might be timely for those of us that maybe are familiar with what it is, but maybe haven't heard it said in that context before, if you could potentially start with a little bit of an intro as to what we're actually talking about when we talk about programmatic. Certainly.
I reckon I'll take this one. So it can be rather ambiguous, so I'll try and clear it up as best possible. In its most basic form, programmatic is simply just a way of transacting digital media. Where it kind of differs from traditional buying is it uses technology to make the transaction a little bit more operationally efficient, and it uses a range of different data sources to ensure that the media that you buy is targeted to your brand's most valuable audiences and then measurable to a business outcome. So whether that be driving website traffic, sales, app downloads, foot traffic into store, or brand awareness outcomes. So while the industry has evolved dramatically over time, the value that marketers get from working in this space, it's kind of stayed pretty consistent. The overarching value kind of lies in consolidation of a multimedia plan so that you can both quickly and deeply assess the value that your marketing plan's driving. So for example, you might look at how brand marketing affects performance, or say how much value digital TV drives when compared with digital audio. Then because of that consolidation piece, you've got a real tangible speed of reporting value. So you can see all of the data that you collect in real time, and you don't have to spend time mashing different spreadsheets together to try and make sense of your media data, which then leads to more time back to spend on fun things in the marketing industry, like strategic planning, for example. And I guess like another knock-on effect of that is decision-making power. So having the speed to react to changes pretty damn quickly so that you can effectively optimize your campaigns while driving for customer acquisition or growth. Or from a more macro level, having the speed to react to different market changes, such as lockdowns or supply challenges, which I'm sure we'll get into shortly as well. And then finally, you've got the value of data and flexibility. So as mentioned before, data for both targeting and measurement, which will help minimize your marketing budget wastage. And the flexibility to ensure that you aren't locked into media contracts. You can move budget between different channels that are generating audience cut through, data that's driving high levels of sales, or creative messages that are resonating with your potential customers. So that's kind of like the value of it. If I could just quickly, for people in the audience, just debunk a little bit of a myth as we kind of get going. One thing I hear a lot on webinars is that people's knowledge of programmatic being that it's simply just a performance marketing line that you see on a media plan. And while there is some truth to that, while in its infancy, it was very much about buying cost-efficient media. It was about overlaying tons of targeted data and then optimizing the hell out of it, but it's kind of dramatically changed over time. And a couple of the major developments that I've seen is the evolution of goals that brands strive for when using the tech, and the evolution of media that can be accessed as well. The two kind of go super hand in hand. So while it was very much just display banners on the internet years back, the amount of digital disruption in media has led to more and more channels being accessible. There's now pretty much anything with an internet connection, right? So think display banners on the internet, think video ads such as YouTube or the ones that you see before news content. It's audio streaming through Spotify or the traditional broadcast networks like Nova and Southern Cross and ARN. It's social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitch, LinkedIn, TikTok, all of those guys. It's digital TV from the likes of SBS On Demand, 9Now and Foxtel. And then the latest channel to kind of enter the space is digital out of home. So think your billboards and your street furniture screens that you see when you're walking through the city. So we can now like strategize around what's the best mixture of all of these channels for your brand, use data to make it as targetable as required, optimize between the paths that lead to the best business outcomes, and work towards a mixture of both brand and performance goals.
Amazing. Thank you, Sam. That was a very helpful and insightful understanding for all of us, and definitely clarifies a few things. So I'm now going to move across to you, Willem. I've actually got two questions here. So the first part is starting with your vision. So what the future of retail looks like for you. And then the second part is what's the most exciting element driving your growth at the moment?
So over the last few years, and this, well, actually this happened over the course of the pandemic, Luxury Escapes has built out from having quite a narrow offering. So at the beginning of the pandemic, we sold what we call flash deals. So that's these deep discounts on premium resorts in Bali, throughout Australia, the Maldives, Thailand, and so on. And so through the pandemic, we've gone and built out the ability to buy flights, built out the ability to connect to a much wider range of deals. So we've gone from having, maybe 100 hotels on the site at any given time to having 10 to 20,000 hotels. So that's been a massive change. We've gone from these sort of deals which are directly contracted over the phones to having deals which are managed, much like the media Sam's talking about, the deals that are managed programmatically. Now, interesting, I've come across from Woolworths recently, which is a very different retail space, but there's a lot of familiar changes. And so the biggest one is the move to establish marketplaces. So, Amazon and eBay have led the way there, but you're seeing Woolworths and Bunnings and Luxury Escapes opening up inventory and exposing the customer base to a much wider range of suppliers through establishing a marketplace. This is a really huge change. I think it's the single biggest change for sure, and it's a big part of our growth strategy. So, I mean, I think to answer the first part of your question, I think that is what the future of retail looks like more and more. And it is certainly the most exciting element driving our growth.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Sounds like an exciting time for you. It would have been no doubt kind of challenging during those first years of COVID, but I think travel now has also become, I guess, one of the things that everybody's got on their to-do list for the next 12 months. So moving on now, I'm going to go back to you, Sam. So what impact has 2021 had on common acquisition trends and challenges? And how have you noticed others and what they're doing well in the space, and what have they shifted to keep up with the changes?
Sorry, just unmute myself. It's a big question. The challenges throughout the year were pretty varied. It's a difficult one. I'll try and rein myself in a bit because I feel like this could be a webinar all on its own. So this could take a few minutes to get through. Sorry in advance, everybody. I guess the first one that we saw across the brands that we work with were were challenges with product and supply, I guess is a good way to put it, whether that be because of struggles with product distribution or a rise in manufacturing costs. Both obviously have a huge impact on customer acquisition. But what we saw in our world, in the media industry, in terms of brands shifting their media buying strategies to combat those challenges were pretty varied, but the ones that saw the most success simply pivoted from more traditional strategies to digital ones. Really taking advantage of what buying media programmatically can offer. It kind of gave them the control and it gave them the flexibility to quickly implement different creative strategies at the click of a button. So, for example, only advertising products that they actually had available in stock in the attempt to maximize sales volumes in what was a pretty difficult time. In saying that, it seems pretty simple, yet the effect that it has a real tangible impact on a business's bottom line, which is, as we said, super important in tougher times. Second challenge that we noticed was in regards to people's media consumption behaviors and the way that different brands navigate that. The way that we think of how to put it, the way that we're consuming media is becoming a lot more fragmented than it ever was, right? We tend to want to be in control of the media that we are consuming. So consuming media on demand, like catch-up TV or streaming services, or spending way more time on the mobile than ever before. Then on top of that, we're absolutely obsessed with checking the internet every day for updates on the virus numbers. We also went into lockdown. That meant that we were consuming more digital media indoors than we ever were before. And the stats kind of that back it up are pretty insane when you look at digital TV ratings, you look at audio consumption, mobile device usage, and general internet surfing. They exponentially increased while the out-of-home industry, for example, took an absolute belting. So the challenge is really about how can a marketer kind of navigate that increased fragmentation and how can they ensure that their investment lacks any wastage and works as hard as it possibly can in the attempt to continue to acquire customers. Moving to solution mode, I think one of the solutions there laid in control and consolidation of advertising. We found that brands that were more traditional in their approach to marketing, for example, cutting direct deals with media owners, had real challenges with spending marketing cash on media, such as billboards or bus shelters, while as a population we were all indoors. So I think it's safe to say that obviously presents some customer acquisition challenges. The ones that had their marketing spend tied up in programmatic channels saw the most success as they had the flexibility to be able to quickly shift budget from out of home in lockdown affected states through to, say, digital TV with a button click. Well, they could move budgets from performance driven media through to brand while consumer spending had been tightened up. Although I guess it's important to note there that when I say brand, I don't necessarily mean those multi-million-dollar mass awareness brand campaigns that not all brands can get into. The successful brands use the technology that we've got available to us to break down those entry point barriers and then used a variety of different data sources to ensure that the branding media that they were purchasing was as highly targeted to their most valuable consumers and the ones that they were most likely to acquire. Targeted branding, I guess, is another way to put that. Utilizing their first-party data asset to inform targeted media, or to use third-party data assets such as like Flybys or MasterCard or Amazon or Google data to inform those strategies. And that final point leads me on to, I guess, one last challenge or trend that we noticed. Broadly speaking, it was the challenge of consumers putting their wallets back in their pockets and tightening up their spending. But then further to that, there's the challenges that brands seem to now be facing in regards to consumer loyalty taking a hit. While of course we're tied to some brands and have preferences, we also spend a lot more time now researching competing offerings, researching products that might be more sustainable, or searching around on different platforms to find a good deal. So that loyalty conversation is quite an interesting one. While it does make it tougher to continue to hold on to repeat purchases, I actually look at it as a pretty big opportunity to generate new revenue by finding more customers while they're in that research phase of their journey. And similarly to what I said before, smart use of data will sort of help you to capture those people in those moments of research and send them a message with your products or services in an attempt to acquire them. In saying that, the challenge of a decrease in consumer spend was much tougher when it came to customer acquisition. The ones that we noticed doing well to combat it really focused on a movement in terms of their media mix and how they distribute their budgets. We saw, and to be fair, kind of still are seeing, continued success when businesses dialed down their hardcore performance efforts across the likes of search and social, and then redistributed their budgets into targeted brand that further supports those performance-driven efforts. And the real interesting part of that is that advertisers that implemented this strategy not only saw more cost-efficient performance in the tough times, but their recovery was a little bit quicker. And the positive sales impact and customer acquisition is kind of still being felt now. So it's had a really nice long-term knock-on effect. That was a lot of words. So I guess to summarize all of that, the brands and marketers that did well ensured that they were working with tech that allowed them to quickly assess what was working and what would generate cut through. We're working in an environment that allowed them to consolidate and be in control and have flexibility of where they're spending and what messages are being pushed out, and ones that shifted their strategies from heavy performance into targeted brand to support the performance channels and drive more acquisition efficiency.
It was a very, very good answer. I just want to remind the attendees, I think when we open this, we've had quite a few more participants join. So please, I encourage everybody as we're going through this webinar, if you've got any questions, to drop them in the chat, and we will actually address them question by question. If not, we can always get to them at the end. But I think using today's opportunity, there's been already some gold mentioned here. Again, as a brand owner, I've got a few ideas that I'm sitting here thinking about. So use this time wisely to really pick the brains of these guys while we've got them here. But we're going to move back to you, Willem. So how have you noticed your customers' behavioural buying patterns shift during the pandemic, and now that we're emerging in some ways out of it?
Yeah, thanks, Olivia. It's really interesting. To start with, it feels almost lazy to say this, but I mean, there's no prizes for guessing what travelers stopped doing when international travel shut down. Initially, everything dropped right back, and domestic travel dropped right back as well. So through early 2020, we saw very low sales. Customers weren't traveling. They didn't have that confidence. But as we built up the local offering and people got used to the change, and new normal became the new normal, from late 2020, we saw a lot of local travel, and that local strength that we built over that time hasn't dropped off as international travel has returned. We're now seeing more domestic travel happening than we were back in 2019. And we're seeing more international travel as well. And so, the key markets haven't fully opened up yet. Restrictions are dropping off in Bali and Thailand, for example, but that's really recent that's happened. So we expect it'll continue to build as travel gets back to what it was in the past. On one level, the kind of behavioral change that people had during lockdown, during just more work from home, all of that, saving the commute, we expected to see them spending more time on research. We expect to see more time on mobiles and so on. But for us, that was masked by the shift in the destination market. So they don't need to research as much when they're traveling at home. So in practice, what we're seeing is less time research, but that's more a reflection of the destinations that they're looking at traveling. And we're certainly seeing a higher volume of purchases and more repeat purchases because people are looking at the travel that's closer to them. They're looking at stuff that's simpler, and I mean, I think they've got more time to spend looking at travel at home. So over that time, we had a lot of new customers, and a lot of our most valuable customers just stopped buying because they're the ones who are really dedicated to going to super premium over water resorts in the Maldives. And so now we're seeing a lot of those customers coming back. We're seeing them surface again and back to the Maldives, back to Thailand, and they've got plenty to spend. So it's a really exciting time for us.
Thanks, Willem. And before we go over to you, Mark, we've just got a question here from John, touching on your previous comment there regarding the first-party data. Can you share some examples of how customers can do this, or how you do this?
Yeah. I actually might ask Willem as well to go in tandem with me. I know Willem and I have spoken a lot about his business and the data that they have, so I think he might have some good examples to put it on the ground a little bit. But what I'm talking about when I'm talking about first-party data is a variety of different sources, to be fair. If you're a sort of bigger enterprise brand and you're working with a CDP or a DMP, then there's ways that you can create different audience segments that we can use to inform our media buying strategy, whether that be cross-selling to different people based off what people have previously purchased from your brand, whether it is re-engaging lapsed users that you might have data on that aren't engaging with your brand anymore. That's two ways to do it. And then we've also got just general pixel data that we can use to inform remarketing strategies so that we can send creative messages to people that have shown high intent to purchase your products by having a look at things on your websites. So there's a few examples there of how we can use your first party data to sort of re-engage people that have shown intent with your brand before. But then further to that, we can also take a lot of that first party data and model against it to find people on the internet that show similar attributes or so show similar behaviors to what your first party audiences have, that we can then use to try and target prospective customers and bring them into your sales cycle. Willem might want to provide a little bit more color based on some of the examples that his business might have used his first party data for. Just on mute there, Willem.
Sorry, is this responding to the question in the chat about the high prices of Google and Facebook and what other channels we're using? No, it's a different question. Okay. Yeah, I mean, for establishing your first party data is like curating it is quite a task. For us, it's a matter of understanding, you know, we understand what people have ordered in the past, but we also understand every hotel that they've looked at in the past. So there's a lot that we can glean from that, because we know the attributes of each hotel. We know if it's a family-friendly hotel, if it's a beach resort, if it's a spa, if it's you know, a children-free resort. So we can build up quite a strong profile of our existing customers, and that's what drives our email program. It also drives our customer marketing, which we can do in digital and so on as well. In terms of how we segment them, there's a real question that we have, because we've got this email program. Attribution is really difficult, where you're seeing people come in through search and through Facebook and through email, through all different channels, and there's questions that we need to answer, and we need to work through with our partners, which are, you know, to understand which customers are genuinely new customers and so on. And that's all a sort of big first party data problem that we're working on at the moment.
Yeah, it's probably also important to note that when we say first party data, even some of the smaller brands in market have got some really rich first party email data that can be used to inform different strategies as well. So don't think that it's all about enterprise brands and how they use these big scalable data assets. We can also do it on a much more on a much smaller scale.
Perfect. We do have a couple of other questions, but I'll come back to them. I just really want to hear from Mark for a moment. It's your time to shine. So how do you see innovation evolving into the rest of 2022 to 2023? And what aspects do you want to make stick and continue to build momentum on?
Yeah, thanks, Olivia. I love questions like this. So yeah, I'll get stuck into it. I actually sit on the Advertising Effectiveness Council at the IAB. One of the real hottest topics of discussion this year has actually most certainly been attention. And attention is going to become an ever-increasing focus, I believe, this year and into 2023, especially with the impending cookie apocalypse. So it's an exciting evolution of both measurement and optimization to drive better outcomes for clients, both in terms of branding and performance outcomes. It's really the next evolution from viewability. So it enables us not only to know that your ads were seen, but actually that attention was paid to them, which is obviously crucial in driving any outcome, really. So we've been working with a couple of the major players in the market at the moment, which are Playground XYZ and Lumen. Both have quite similar offerings. They use large eye tracking panels of over 1,000 people per country across a large variety of kind of channels, publishers and placements to see how much attention they pay to ads in those environments. What they then do is then they use AI with all of the variables that can be accessed on the internet, such as scroll speed, content, ad position and size. And they use that to accurately predict, I think it's to about a 98% accuracy, attention paid to those ads. So what's fascinating about this for me is that it actually, the outputs actually turn a lot of our current thinking and planning on its head. So when we're looking at kind of a cost per attentive reach point, video and branding come out far, far stronger, and they actually justify the higher cost of those medias in a lot of cases. So Plus, the other thing is when you're optimizing towards attention by using like a DSP plugin, for instance, the uplifts that you get in brand and performance metrics have been proven to be significant. So it's a really interesting space. The other thing I really love about it is it means that publishers are going to have to work even harder to make quality content that people are there to read versus, you know, the kind of clickbait and low quality editorial that you find on the internet. So you're going to get a much more quality audience when you're optimizing towards attention. So what I'd love to see is more clients invest into branding channels and better understanding their impact on the entire marketing ecosystem. And it definitely makes way for more exciting campaigns than we're used to. And it marks quite a big shift in the industry that I'm excited about. And it lends itself well to programmatic as well. Further to this, it kind of ties in well to some of the evolving channels that Sam mentioned, such as programmatic digital out of home, which has seen kind of huge growth in the past year and does provide significant opportunity, but also efficiency in the way it's bought. So for both large and small advertisers, there are benefits. And then another one thing that I think a lot of advertisers are excited about is we're going to be able to buy Netflix later this year, which I think people will jump on. And obviously that's a previously inaccessible audience that's been taken away from us in the past. In Australia, probably more than pretty much any country. So yeah, there's plenty of exciting stuff happening in the industry that will really help us to innovate for our clients. So I'm really excited to see a lot more of that to come.
Thank you. And then following on from that, how are you creating stickiness with new and existing customers?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, at Bench, we're kind of continuing to evolve we've got a proprietary Bench Connect platform that we use, and we take on client feedback, and what we do is we've kind of recently enabled clients to connect all the channels that they might not be running with us. They might be running themselves, or they might be running them elsewhere, so that they can see all of their digital campaigns in one place. Just to provide a bit of context to Bench Connect, it's actually it's a platform that's been used internally by our team here at Bench, and has kind of evolved over the last 10 years since its inception. And what it does is it connects kind of seamlessly to pretty much every digital partner you've ever heard of, and brings all that data seamlessly via APIs. So what that's done is it's given our team huge workflow efficiencies and allowed us to focus on a lot more of what's important and things like digital strategy and stuff like that. It also saves our customers kind of significant times in terms of reporting and analytics by having everything at their fingertips. And then they've got kind of an ease of extending into other channels through kind of our managed services team here. So the other thing is more recently we opened up that Bench Connect platform as more of a SaaS offering, to allow kind of bigger agencies and brands to use it in the same way that our trading team do, and garner those kind of efficiencies through, you know, just seeing everything in one place, including your pacing and your performance against your goals and things like that. So I think a couple of the key bits here in terms of driving stickiness are really evolving your business with and for your clients, plus also lowering any barriers of entry to working with you. So just making it as easy as possible, and kind of being, you know, what your clients are looking to you for effectively. So the other thing we're trying to do as well is to see all of our clients face to face as much as possible now that it is possible. So we're kind of moving around a lot, including kind of flying to different places across Australia to make sure we are seeing people. And I think that's important in building those longer lasting relationships, which I think it's been harder to build those relationships virtually. So what we want to be is more of a business partner to our clients and share in their successes versus more of kind of an activation vendor. So what we're doing is we're really building out our offering and endeavoring to get a kind of a far deeper understanding of our clients' businesses and challenges to be able to offer them more. And it's this kind of higher level of partnership that provides more value to our clients, but also makes them more likely to stick with us, even through the tough times which we've been experiencing and are probably going to continue to experience. And then, yeah, there's loads of significant knowledge and expertise within our business that we need to be making the most of. And you know, I recommend for other businesses to do the same, to be honest.
Thank you very much. And before I go on to the next question, which will be to you, Willem, I'm not sure who wants to take this question that's come through in the chat. It is, I imagine it's quite an open-ended and very could be answered differently depending on the customer, but we'll try and have a go at it. Given the high prices of Google and Facebook, what channels do you suggest retailers utilize? I mean, one thing I can say here is there's so many channels I've heard you speak of today, Sam, that, 7 years in business, there's half of those I've never tried or considered. So yeah, have a go at answering the question, but good luck.
Okay. Right, let's do it. So firstly, I would question the high prices of Google and Facebook comment in the first place, just slightly challenge that. And the reason that I would challenge that is that I don't think we should be looking at cost of media as the variable. I think we should be looking at cost of outcome as the variable that makes sense. So if it's driving you cost-efficient outcomes, then you're in a good place. In saying that, there are some challenges with measurement. There's some challenges with tracking across Google and Facebook at the moment, and those two environments are becoming a much more competitive space than they ever were before. So what I would suggest is that retailers have a look at what they're doing through Google and Facebook, and then try and have a look at how they might be able to use other channels in the media mix to help support the efficiencies that they can gain further down on performance-driven channels. I'll go into a little bit more detail on that in a bit, actually, in one of the other questions that's going to be asked later on, and I'll give it a little bit more color there.
Perfect, thank you. So Willem, how have you matured your approach to more personalised targeting and segmentation?
So I think the main thing driving the maturity of our approach is that we've now got a big, wonderful problem, which is that we've got too many products and we've got lots of markets. So we've got more source markets, which is people wanting to go on holidays, and more destination markets, which is the places they travel to. So we started with basically Australians traveling to Bali, but now it's Fiji, Thailand, Maldives, throughout Australia, Hawaii, Singapore, and it's also Singapore, India. It's also travelers from Singapore, India, US, UK, and so on. So we used to have this manageable volume of deals where the people who contract the deals, they know what deals are most popular. They can literally curate the deals. It's pretty easy. There's a manageable number where you can order them on the homepage, and it's the right order for just about everyone. So we've got more customers than we used to. It used to just be premium resort holidays appealing to top 5-10% of Australian households. So now more deals, more customers. There's this one-to-one personalization we need to do, and that's based on sort of immediate real-time intent. You're looking at this hotel deal, it doesn't have the dates you want, what should we be doing for you? And then, that's right there on the website in the interaction, and then that extends into what you're doing in digital, the retargeting and search bidding and email and so on. So that's probably the most important level where we're putting a lot of focus. Then there's understanding where you've got lower intent, where we might have seen customers in the past, in the past few months. We haven't seen them in the past few days. Understanding where they're likely to travel, and we've got a good sense of that and how they respond to emails, what deals they look at, and we can build a profile of destinations and holiday types. If you've got an affinity towards beach resort holidays, family-friendly resorts, we see that through the history of deals that you've looked at. But this is really interesting. There's a significant risk in this. So if we're sending emails and targeting ads, people are clicking on those emails, clicking on the ads, and we use that to decide what to target them with, we can end up with an echo chamber where we just create this Bali echo chamber where just people, that's all they see and that's all they think we do. So we also have to have approaches to introduce discoverability in recommendations, to deliberately break out of the product groups that you've got an affinity for and that a customer's engaging with into either adjacent groups or something completely different. The other things that are really important are a bit more basic, a bit more core segmentation. So basic demographic facets are super important to travel. So our customer value curve is pretty flat across the bottom 80%, even bottom 90%, then it ramps up massively. So there's more difference between the 90th percentile of customers and the 99th percentile of customers than there is between the 90th percentile and the 10th percentile. So for that top 10%, we need a lot of granularity to understand who they are, what appeals to them, how to communicate with them. So we've got a lot of focus in that space. And then for the rest of them, there's a lot of understanding of who has the potential to move into that space, to be able to identify them, treat them in comms like they are in the top 10%. There's a huge amount of value for us in getting that right.
Thank you very much. And back to Mark. What does it take to acquire customers and sustain growth in a fast changing landscape?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I think it's never been more important really to stay ahead of the curve and offer customers something that they can't get elsewhere. There's obviously, as Sam spoke a lot about, the market and also consumer trends are ever changing, and there have been some kind of significant challenges experienced by the industry recently, kind of including but not limited to, you know, those increased advertising costs like search and social being up about 20% in terms of cost year on year, combined with kind of those supply and staffing issues, reductions in foot traffic, especially within the CBDs and things like that. And it's our job to help our customers and prospective customers to understand what's going on, to kind of get them, and also to get them ahead of their competition in this challenging space. I think, like Aaron's question, which I'm sure we'll come on to, around the cookieless apocalypse and being prepared for that, is another aspect as well. So there's obviously an education piece, there's a preparedness piece, and yeah, it's basically making sure that you're ahead of the game. But one of the real benefits of digital and programmatic is it does offer that real flexibility and the efficiencies that advertisers are going to need, especially if we're heading into this recession. And it's that ability to kind of test and learn really quickly that's going to be beneficial. But we need to make sure that our clients especially are making the most out of every advertising dollar and every opportunity that there is in the market, and most importantly, doing it better than their competitors. You can't be doing the same thing as your competitors and be getting ahead, unless you've got a shed load more spend than them. So what it does, like programmatic does give us that bit of an edge there, where we can do a lot of that testing and learning and working out what's going to work best for us, especially when, you know, channels like search and social are becoming harder to drive the same outcomes. The other thing we've noticed is a real trend of in-housing across kind of all sizes of advertiser, and as a result of this, we've been evolving our business to support that trend, and also to help provide businesses with the tools, but also the knowledge to in-house should they desire, but also to make the right decisions and be prepared for what's to come. Fundamentally, it's providing those solutions that the market is looking for, innovating and providing a unique proposition in that cluttered marketplace. And then the next major thing, which I mentioned before, is really getting out there, networking, seeing people face to face, and doing more kind of exciting events like this one, you know. So yeah.
Thank you. And then Sam, I will get you to also maybe cover off the comment there regarding the cookies, but also how are you accelerating the potential of your chosen acquisition channels is my first question. All right.
I'll go with the thoughts on the cookie apocalypse first, for lack of a better term. And it depends on whether you're looking at the apocalypse as a consumer versus as a professional. As a consumer, I think it's great. It's awesome. We've got way more control over what our data is being used for, which is only a good thing, rather than the free-for-all that we previously had. From a professional perspective, it flips the dial a little bit. It makes it much tougher for us to be super targeted in our approach to what we're doing with media. So it's important to differentiate what data we're going to be losing when the cookie apocalypse hits us. And it effectively will just diminish the number of third-party cookies that we'll find on Chrome, which effectively makes audience segmentation and targeting a little bit more tough. However, it does not affect your first-party cookies. So doing re-engagement strategies that I kind of spoke about previously, that sort of thing won't go anywhere. So what I would suggest as a brand that might be dependent on third-party cookies now for audience segmentation and targeting is that you get more comfortable with doing simple tactics like contextual targeting. Test and learn what works best for your brand, and try and implement channels that don't rely on cookies at all, such as digital TV or digital out of home or digital audio, for example. So that's probably my thoughts on the cookie apocalypse. Who knows when it's going to hit us? Chrome have kind of made a few announcements now. It hasn't hit us yet. So you still have time on your side to get a little bit more comfortable with it now and start testing other strategies. Now, Olivia, to go to your question around accelerating potential of your chosen acquisition channels, I think I might build upon one of the points I raised earlier about how we saw a number of successful brands slightly pivot their strategies to redistribute budgets from performance to targeted brand. And this should help also answer Lizzie's question around the high prices of Google and Facebook. Again, I'll build on that as well. Now, I think, as we all know, search and social are fantastic channels for generating really quick and cost-efficient sales. But the question that kind of most marketers or brands face on the topic kind of become, what happens when those sales or leads in those environments start to slow down? Or what happens when they become too expensive? Or how do you make sure that you can sort of keep momentum and maintain really good results? Those kind of environments, not ones in which you can just simply pump more budget and keep the positive ROIs flowing. Social media buying as points of diminishing returns against your in-market audiences, in which you'll eventually see your cost per acquisition rise, especially with other tracking changes. And when looking at search, we know that it will often lead to the best ROI performance, but it'll only capture consumers that are already in your sales funnel. So the answer to accelerating the potential acquisition growth lies in targeted brand. And when brands implemented this strategy, effectively what we noticed were kind of two major things. So firstly, we saw that there was a real acquisition rate uplift on search and social activity after introducing brand channels. So we're able to assess two different paths to conversion, right? The first being people that had clicked on a social ad or a search ad and then converted, with the second being people that were served a programmatic brand ad, then clicked on a search or social ad and then converted. And what we tried to assess there was the conversion rate uplift between those two paths. And the results are really informative. Like in one case, we saw up to about a 3,000% increase in the rate of ticket sales for a sporting event company. And effectively what that means is the brand could spend less money on performance channels to drive more cost-efficient results lower down the funnel when they introduce brand. So it was a super cool piece of insight. And the second thing that we noticed was that because money shifted from performance, in which you're often targeting high intent audiences anyway, through to brand, the rate of the new customers acquired increased pretty dramatically. So we really saw this kind of twofold customer acquisition value simply from redistributing the media mix. It's a really odd one because the theory's kind of always been there. There's a company called Analytics Partners that run a ton of studies in our industry, and one of their major findings is that when you increase the number of platforms and channels in your media mix, you'll generally continue to see incremental ROI. And then alongside that, we're seeing more and more challenges with measurement due to privacy changes on iOS and the upcoming changes to Chrome that we've mentioned. So yeah, going back to the question, to accelerate the potential of your chosen acquisition channels, flip the dial a little bit. Be more efficient on those channels by introducing brand and assessing the value that overall plan drives. You'll likely drive new customers and be a little bit more cost efficient on your performance-driven efforts.
Thank you. I've got a couple more questions here. And if there are other questions from our participants, we could just drop them in the chat and we'll make sure we get to them before we end the webinar at 12. So I'm not sure who wants to answer this one. What are you noticing to be the keys to growth and also the key priorities, especially with the unpredictability and agility that was needed over the past 6 to 12 months? Who'd like to take that?
If you want to have a go first, Mark, I can chime in after.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, I think we've covered quite a lot of pieces there where kind of flexibility is key, and also, you know, like testing and learning with things changing so dramatically as they have been. It's just important to have an open mind, really, and try new things and maximize what you're doing with different channels and your marketing efforts. I think William's probably got some interesting views when it comes to more of your optimizing your website and how you can actually like improve on all of your metrics in that sense as well, and using your first party data.
Yeah, I think the agility is important for sure, because we're going through like the change that we're going through in cookies dying a slow death. They're going. It's it's a moving target, but they're going. How we look at media is going to change pretty dramatically, and I think Mark and Sam have talked to that a lot. So as an advertiser, being able to get on top of it and understand it, and it feels like there's kind of two main things that advertisers are being asked to do. I mean, these are the ones that I've picked up, and the first one is getting on top of your first party data and making sure to build that and not lose any of the opportunities you have to build that up, which will enable you to target on a wider range of platforms. And the other thing is, as we go back to the future in contextual buying being important and attention being important, getting a good understanding of that will be super important. But at the same time, the theme of agility is really important as we go through change. Like the reason Luxury Escapes has done so well through the pandemic is shifting the overall product that they're buying and doubling down on development when other people are pulling back, acting quickly and understanding the market and what's going on. I think there's a lot of dimensions to that.
Thank you. Now, what are the first 3 critical steps for retailers who are wanting to upscale their acquisition?
Sam, you probably touched on some of these.
Yeah. I feel like I'm almost going to be repeating myself just a little bit with this question. But all right, let's give it a go. With 3 key steps, I would say first point is try and work in an environment in which you're not locked into any long-term contracts where possible. I think the future is unpredictable, and we've learned that the hard way over the last couple of years. So if you can work in an environment that allows you to be flexible in your approach and agile, as we kind of just spoke about, then that will start to set you up for success for sure when it comes to upscaling acquisition. The second thing, I don't kind of sound like I'm beating the same drum a little bit here, but I would suggest that anyone that's not been comfortable with looking at the implementation of brand channels to help support the efficiency of your performance-driven search and social channels, that would be a great place to start as well. And thirdly, quite simply, is find a trusted partner that you can work with so that you can have honest conversations about testing and learning and what's adding the most value back to your brand. And continue to grow on that over time. Start slow and then continue to scale as you start to assess the data both quickly and deeply and understand what's really driving you the best customer acquisition growth.
Thank you. Just a couple more questions from me before we wrap up. So again, if anyone's got any final questions that you wanted to drop in the chat, you're welcome to do so. You can also drop them anonymously. But what are you noticing to be the key differentiator in exemplary performance in this space? Again, open to anyone who wants to contribute there.
I've got quite maybe a controversial answer to this one, but I think people neglect their websites and their SEO quite significantly. Even some of the very large brands I've worked with in the past. I think that actually like your website experience, like user experience, and also the speed of your website and things that kind of Google scores you on as well and impact every channel that you work with are often kind of undervalued and also underinvested in by businesses. I would say that, and especially kind of coming up to some of the quite significant challenges that we do, there's no point in driving traffic to your website if it doesn't then convert and make a difference to what you're doing. And then I think the other thing is as we're going into the cookie apocalypse as well, and we're needing more first party data, you need to provide some kind of value exchange to your customers. And I think that the other thing to think about here as well is your competitors aren't your niche kind of group that you consider your competitors. You're competing with the likes of Uber and Google and some of the amazing experiences that you do get on the internet, and they raise the expectations of your clients as to what they expect from your business and your website. So you're effectively competing with everybody. So I think website and actually working on that is fundamental to driving outcomes.
Yeah, good point there. I might ask you this question, Willem. How are you identifying and prioritising what will have the most impact given your customers' desires and needs? You might have covered a little bit of that, but if you want to expand on that one there.
Yeah, so we're being pretty systematic about it in working out. We know which touch points influence sales. And so I mean, this really follows on from what Mark's saying about optimizing the website. There's a lot of focus for us there. We know all the points at which customers come through before they buy. And these are opportunities for us to do better personalization, better recommendations, and so on. So as a starting point, it's looking at, this many customers come through here, this many sales flow on from that. What would a 5% lift in sales be worth? What would a 10% lift in sales be worth? And so from that, we're able to really, at a pretty granular level, go, this is the next thing we build. This is the next thing we build. And so we take that same kind of approach to prioritization everywhere, but starting with the customer experience, with what we have direct control over in phones, in emails, the website, the mobile app, and so on. That's the approach that we take.
Perfect, thank you. So I don't have any more formal questions now, but I think what might be nice is we do still have, maybe 5 minutes left of discussion. I know myself as a smaller brand, as I said today, I've learned a lot from this webinar, so I just want to thank you as well for the incredible insights. But I'm just curious, as a brand myself, who we've traditionally run most of our channels in-house and then from time to time outsourced to ad agencies and had very varied, I guess, I don't know what the right word is there, but, sometimes it's been a great experience, sometimes not so, and we never know, was that us or them and whatever. But if we were to look at expanding and doing some of the stuff that you guys talk about today, what does that journey look like for a brand when they, I guess from our point of view, where we've never gone down this path outside of the traditional Google, Facebook, all that sort of stuff? What does the journey look like? I know when we go to ad agency, you always hear that, it's going to take 6 months to build, blah, blah, blah. Is it a similar journey, or could you just explain for those that maybe are interested in exploring more about this after today?
I think it's important to experiment and find a trusted partner. It is a really complex landscape. Digital in general is extremely complex, and there is a lot of smoke and mirrors there, so it is difficult to navigate. So like you say, it's difficult to find the right partners that are gonna give you the best results, and there's so many options and different variables and things that you can look at, and some people will say you need 6 months to drive an outcome or shift the metrics, and I'm not sure that's true. I think we've seen some quite good successes even with branding within a month period. I think it very much depends on the brand as well, because if you've got quite a short kind of cycle in terms of purchase and ease of purchase and that customer journey, then it's easier to drive a shift in results quicker. Whereas if you have kind of a more considered brand like a car or something, then that does take longer, and then to actually shift the dial on those kind of things, it can take a lot longer to do. So I think just it's important to kind of get the right partner and explore different things with them, and just have some expertise to help you out, really, from my perspective.
If I just building on that, I think the trusted partner thing is super important. I've done in-housing at 2 very big companies with big media budgets, and we still had an agency partner at the time, but in those scenarios we had teams of in-house teams managing search and programmatic and Facebook and so on, that are 2, 3, 4 people working on $30 million of media. And you get smaller than that, having two, you get to a team size where if someone goes on leave, you're in trouble. And so just having the support is super important, and being on top of new developments as they come out. You start to lose a bit of that. We start to have some of the people who are sort of ex-agency people who they're just not as on the edge of as each thing comes out. that they're able to do it quickly and act quickly. So yeah, just echo that point, a trusted partner, really important.
I don't think I need to build on that. I was going to say pretty much the exact same thing as what Willem just said.
I will say, Sam, in closing, you've added a lot of insight for people today. You're obviously experienced in this space. So have you got any closing comments that maybe potentially you haven't touched on today? We've got a couple of minutes left before I will wrap up and do my thank yous.
Not so much closing comments in terms of stuff that hasn't been raised, but just to reinforce again, there's a few key words that we should probably just quickly touch on before we wrap up. And one of the real key ones that we just spoke about before, which is super important, Willem really hit the nail on the head, is trust. Make sure you're working with a trusted partner. Make sure you're working with a partner that's asking you the right questions, that really understands your brand, and not only understands your brand, but understands your pain points that data and media can help to solve. That's one point. Test and learn is another really big one. And in addition to that testing and learning, if you don't have a first party data strategy, start thinking about how you can create a value exchange with your audiences so that you can start to collect some data, because that first party data is going to become ever more important in informing your media buying strategies moving forward. And look to brand. I think we speak about these tracking challenges around iOS and Chrome, and one of the real key ways to sort of differentiate yourself and get around that is to look at brand channels that will help to support some of the challenges that we're going to be facing in the short term.
Amazing, thank you. And Mark, have you got any closing comments?
No, like I think, yeah, just what Sam said is pretty concise, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I think, yeah, what you need is somebody that is taking the effort away from you and advising you in the right way. When you work with a partner, you shouldn't be having to put in extra effort in terms of what you're doing your side. It should take some of that away. So ideally, you want somebody that works as a bit of an extension of your team and kind of can address all of the above things that we've chatted about, and can kind of innovate and keep you ahead of the curve, really, and ahead of your competition. So yeah.
Amazing. So in closing, I would firstly like to thank all of our attendees today for your engagement and for the chat, and for staying with us during this webinar. I would also like to thank Willem again from Luxury Escapes, and Sam and Mark from Bench. And on behalf of NORA, I would really like to thank everybody for attending today. This recording will be sent to all attendees after today, and it will be featured this week on the NORA TV platform. So thank you everybody for your time, and on behalf of NORA, I will say goodbye.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, everyone. It's been a blast.